What happened when the undercover boss returned? Jackson Carter hadn't stepped foot inside King Lion HQ in over a year. Once the face behind every major deal, the man who'd built the company from the ground up, now he was just another face in the crowd. But today, disguised behind a grey beard, wrinkled skin, and a battered delivery uniform, he had one goal: see what had become of the empire he left behind. He entered through the back dock, head low, cart rattling under boxes marked with the lion emblem he once cherished. No fanfare, no recognition. Just a security guard with earbuds in who waved him through without even making eye contact. As he wheeled his cart through the main lobby, a sleek young man in a sharp navy suit brushed past him with such force that Jackson nearly stumbled. That man, laughing, didn't even glance down. "King Lion isn't a retirement home, old man. Watch yourself or you'll fall and try to sue us," he scoffed. Jackson didn't react, but he knew the voice. Ethan Blake. Once a hungry young manager he'd personally mentored, now promoted to CEO in his absence. As Ethan strutted off, proud and oblivious, Jackson's calm eyes followed him. "So this is what you've become," he thought. Arrogant, cold, everything King Lion was never supposed to be. Inside the building, things felt foreign. Gone were the warm greetings, the framed photos of teams and milestones, replaced now by sterile performance charts and slogans like "work faster, think less, deliver more." No one looked twice at the old man pushing the cart. In the accounting department, Jackson peeked around. No sign of Wendy Harris, his longest-serving team lead. Instead, a young man mumbled without looking up, "Just leave it on the desk. Wendy took early retirement. I'm her replacement." Early retirement? The words echoed like a quiet death knell. Room after room, hallway after hallway, the picture was becoming clear. What used to be a family was now a machine, oiled by fear and driven by numbers. Jackson passed a group of employees by the coffee station. They didn't even glance at him. He was invisible, a ghost pushing a cart through the ruins of his dream. Upstairs, he overheard Ethan in the meeting room on the phone. "Old contracts are dead. This is a new era. Anyone who can't keep up will be left behind." He kept pushing his cart, but inside him, something cracked. In the break room, once a cozy refuge with couches, framed memories and warmth, now sat only plastic chairs and a flickering vending machine. A single bold poster hung on the wall. "Work faster, think less, deliver more." He stood there, staring, while another older employee walked in, grabbed a bottle of water in silence, and walked out without a word. Jackson whispered under his breath, "They're afraid to even breathe." Later, at the loading dock, he met Noah, a young, cheerful employee who greeted him with a rare smile. "First delivery guy today who's spoken to me nicely," Noah said. Jackson smiled faintly. "You knew?" "6 months. Still training, but things feel weird lately. People are tense, like they're afraid." Jackson paused. "Afraid of what?" Noah lowered his voice. "Of being replaced." Jackson didn't answer, but in his gut, he knew. This wasn't paranoia. It was truth. That night, in his small rented apartment, Jackson spread out papers, printed emails and photos across a makeshift desk. On his wall, he pinned one question: what happened to King Lion after I left? But as he stared at the name Ethan Blake circled in red, he already knew. This wasn't just a fact-finding mission anymore. It was personal, and it had just begun. The next morning, Jackson came in earlier than usual. He walked through the quiet hallways, each echo of his cartwheels bouncing against walls now lined with graphs instead of people's pictures. In his coat pocket, hidden carefully between fabric layers, was a small pen camera. Not the newest tech, but discreet enough for what he needed. The accounting office door was ajar. Inside, hushed voices floated into the hallway. "We're really altering the numbers like this? Aren't you afraid we'll get caught?" A second voice replied, low but steady. "The boss said he has a plan. If anyone asks, we're just following orders." Jackson didn't pause. He pushed the cart in like he was just another delivery guy. One of the employees jumped a little. "Delivery, just leave it there." "Right," Jackson said, slowly setting the box down while his eyes flicked to the computer screen left unlocked. 2 spreadsheets were open, one with real figures, the other clearly doctored to show a fake rise in profits. He said nothing, just made a mental note. This is bigger than bad culture. This is fraud. Later, around noon, Jackson returned to the office area and saw a desk left unattended. The computer was still on. A folder on screen was labeled Vendor Adjustments. Jackson moved quickly. He plugged in a USB drive and copied every file he could find. Altered pricing, phony numbers, falsified reports. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what he was holding. Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Jackson yanked the USB out, shut the folder, and turned toward the door just as a manager walked in. "What are you doing in here?" "Looking for the restroom?" Jackson replied, keeping his voice weak and frail. "Got lost." The man squinted. "This area's restricted. Straight ahead, turn left." Jackson nodded and walked out. But inside, his heart was pounding. He hadn't been caught, not fully. And now he had the proof. Later that day, out at the docks, he spotted Noah again, standing beside a duffel bag, eyes red. "They terminated me," Noah said quietly. "Said I was leaking internal information." Jackson's brow tightened. "Did they have proof?" "No, just said someone reported me. I think it's because of what I told you." Jackson placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Don't let this place change who you are." Noah nodded slightly, but he looked broken. That evening, back in his tiny apartment, Jackson laid out everything. Files, notes, names, photos. One page read, "Noah Taylor, fired for honesty." In the center of it all, he wrote in red ink, "No more doubt, only the plan." He opened the hidden camera, plugged it into his old laptop, and played back footage of Ethan stepping on a box with the company logo. "Old lions should know when to—" Jackson stared at the screen. His voice, once calm, now carried steel. "You've torn out the soul of this company, but I built it, and I won't let that become its legacy." The next morning, he rolled his delivery car back through the front doors of King Lion. This time, the box wasn't filled with office supplies. It was filled with the truth. And Jackson Carter was done pretending.
Jackson didn't waste time. He made his way through the corridors of King Lion with slow, deliberate steps. Every box on his cart was labelled with a department, but the real delivery was the envelope he carried in his inner coat pocket, packed, with printouts, screenshots, and a new USB loaded with video footage. On the 3rd floor, he spotted Cheryl, his former assistant, chatting with another employee by the copier. He waited until she noticed him. "Cheryl," he said softly, playing his role. "Sorry to bother you. I've got a package for HR, but the hallway's blocked. Mind helping me find another route?" She blinked at first, recognition flickering, faintly, but then she nodded. "Sure, come this way." As the elevator doors closed behind them, Jackson spoke quietly. "Do you ever feel like King Lion isn't King Lion anymore?" Cheryl looked at him a moment. Her reply came low and certain. "Every single day, but most people are too afraid to say it." That silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was mutual understanding. When they reached the HR office, Jackson placed the packet on the front desk. He was about to leave when he heard voices behind a slightly open door. This round of layoffs includes everyone over 50. Younger workforce lowers the insurance risks. That's age discrimination. Orders from above. No more discussion. Jackson froze. They weren't even hiding it anymore. It was out in the open. No remorse, no care. Just quotas and targets. On his way out, he saw Noah in the parking lot, fitting his few belongings into a bag. They locked eyes. "You don't deserve this," Jackson said quietly. "I know. But if no one speaks up, this will keep happening." Jackson nodded. This young man had more integrity than half the leadership upstairs. Later that day, Jackson made a delivery to the executive floor. The place had changed. Glass partitions everywhere, expensive art on the walls, and silence in every corner. It didn't feel like a workplace anymore. It felt like a fortress. He stopped near Ethan's office, pretending to check a label. Through the glass, he saw Ethan at his desk, feet up, phone pressed to his ear. "Just push the good numbers into this quarter," Ethan said with a chuckle. "The board only cares about results." A nearby employee whispered to Jackson as he passed. "Bonus policy's been changed too. Doesn't matter who works hardest, only the ones with good numbers get paid." Jackson nodded slowly. He wasn't looking at scattered mistakes anymore. He was seeing a system, built around deception, sustained by fear. That evening, Jackson sat in his apartment, surrounded by open folders and glowing screens. He replayed the hidden camera footage again, the one where the finance team joked about making the numbers pretty. On one wall, he had pinned a single sheet of paper. The problem isn't just Ethan, it's the culture. He looked through the old employee roster. Almost none of the people he'd hired remained. He circled Noah's name with red ink and wrote beside it, "The last one who still has a heart." Jackson leaned back, weary but unwavering. He'd made a mistake in trusting Ethan, but he would fix it. No more files, no more disguises, just truth ready to explode. The next morning, Jackson arrived early again with a new package, this one carefully prepared. Inside the accounting office, a familiar folder glowed on the screen. Vendor adjustments. He plugged in a USB. This time, he found more than fake invoices. He found a transfer trail. Money going to a shell company. No records, no listed owners. He pulled the USB, added a sticky note. Suspicious transfers. Possible money laundering. Just as he stepped out, a manager approached. "Delivery?" Jackson nodded. "Just finished." But his thoughts were elsewhere. The house of cards was about to fall. At midday, Jackson waited in the delivery lot with our manifest in hand. A sleek, brand new Porsche rolled into the executive parking area. It gleamed in the sun, spotless, showy, a rolling monument to excess. Ethan stepped out, grinning, phone at his ear. "Just got it yesterday. Didn't even need financing. This quarter's bonus covered the whole thing." Jackson watched from a distance. His face didn't flinch, but inside, something cracked even deeper. Next to him, a driver muttered under his breath, "We get told to tighten belts, cut bonuses, cut hours, but the boss gets a new car every 3 months." Jackson turned to him and said calmly, "They only tighten the belts of those without a voice." The driver looked at him and gave a dry, bitter smile. Nothing more needed to be said. That afternoon, Jackson returned to the HR department with another delivery. As he entered, he ran into Linda, one of the few familiar faces left. Once his personal executive assistant, now a quiet cog in a much colder machine. "Thank you," she said distractedly, signing for the package. "Sorry, my mind's all over the place." Jackson tilted his head. "Something wrong?" Linda sighed, rubbing her forehead. "I have to process at least 10 termination forms a week. Some of these folks have been here over a decade, but if they're past 45, they're suddenly no longer a fit for the culture." He paused. "Have you ever thought maybe this isn't King Lion anymore?" She met his eyes, really looked at him this time. For the first time in my life, she said quietly, I think King Lion left with its founder. Now it's just a logo. Jackson didn't speak. Her words stayed with him like a stone in his chest. That night, in his apartment, the walls were covered in papers, photos, and red yarn connecting events like a crime scene. On the laptop, a video played, a discussion in the finance department. If we adjust the reports like this, who's going to ask questions? Just follow Ethan's directive. Pretty numbers make for a pretty seat. Jackson clicked pause. He noted every name, every date, every timestamp. Then his burner phone buzzed. They know someone's watching. Be careful. Jackson glanced around the quiet room. No movement, no noise. But the warning was clear. Ethan was getting nervous. He was watching the shadows now. Jackson opened a drawer and pulled out his old worn baseball cap. The first piece of his disguise, he muttered to himself. Henry still has work to do. The next morning, tension gripped the air at King Lion. An internal announcement came through the loudspeaker. All employees report to the main hall in 10 minutes. Jackson pushed his cart quietly toward a side room with a glass window. From there, he could see the entire scene unfold. On stage stood Ethan, flanked by his new leadership team. Microphone in hand, voice calm and firm like a well-rehearsed speech. We are undergoing a strong restructuring to steer this company in the right direction. If you cannot adapt, then unfortunately, this is no longer the place for you. Whispers broke out in the crowd. Some lowered their heads. Others stood frozen, afraid to speak. Jackson recorded every word. Ethan didn't know it yet, but every sentence was becoming a nail in his own coffin. After the meeting, Jackson spotted Noah by one of the delivery trucks. The young man looked shaken. What's wrong? Jackson asked. Noah held up a manifest. System says there should be 500 units. I counted 350. Did you report it? I did. Manager told me to just log what the system says and stop making trouble. It's the third time this week. Last guy who reported stuff got fired the next day. Jackson nodded slowly, face hardening. Then it's not a mistake anymore. It's a pattern. In his shirt pocket, Jackson scribbled another note. Inventory manipulation confirmed. And just like that, the final piece was falling into place. The machine wasn't broken. It was programmed to deceive, and Jackson was ready to pull the plug. The final act was already in motion. That afternoon, Jackson wheeled a sealed envelope into the executive offices, labeled discreetly, but packed with damning evidence. Inside were documents, video recordings, and the copied data from the shell, company transfers. Everything he'd gathered over weeks of silent observation, and one last USB drive, the real one. Ethan's office door was open. He was on the phone again, laughing, his voice as smug as ever. The old suppliers are whining again? Cut them. If they want to stay, they play by the new rules. Otherwise, let them queue outside. Jackson entered quietly and began sorting the documents on the side shelf, deliberately brushing the edge of Ethan's desk, causing the monitor to light up. Ethan noticed. Hey, what are you doing at my desk? Sorry, Jackson said, still in character. Just sorting by department. Probably bumped the screen. Ethan stood up, his tone shifting. I've seen you hanging around accounting, haven't I? The air turned sharp. Jackson knew he'd pushed it too far this time. Ethan stepped closer, suspicion now flaring into certainty. Security! He barked. Two guards burst into the room. One grabbed Jackson's arms while the other began patting him down. They pulled the decoy USB from his coat pocket and the pen camera clipped to his shirt. What's this? Ethan snarled, snatching the items. A spy kit? Who do you work for? FedEx? UPS? Who sent you? Jackson stayed calm. I'm just a delivery man. Drop the act, Ethan roared. You've been snooping around my departments, haven't you? He turned to the guards. Take him down to the lobby. I want every employee to see what happens to traitors. They dragged Jackson through the halls, past curious stares and startled glances. Some employees whispered, others just lowered their heads, pretending not to see. Ethan followed closely behind, waving the USB like a trophy. In the lobby, Ethan addressed the stunned crowd. "This man," he declared, "was caught stealing confidential information. He posed as a delivery man, but he's been spying on us, on me, on King Lion." Jackson stood silently, eyes scanning the crowd. He saw fear, uncertainty. Some recognized him as the kind old delivery man. Others watched with blank faces, not daring to react. Ethan's voice rang out, loud and bitter. "Let this be a warning. There's no room in this company for liars, for traitors, or for the weak." Behind him, Noah had quietly entered the lobby. He stood frozen, watching it all unfold. Security shoved Jackson through the front doors, out, into the sunlight. At the gate, one of them snapped, "Get out! Come back and we're calling the police." Jackson gave a slight nod, his shoulders hunched, his step slow. But the moment he was out of sight from the security cameras, his back straightened, his walk quickened. The disguise dropped like a mask removed after a long play. He crossed the street and opened the side door of an old van. Inside sat a battered laptop, a secure Wi-Fi router, and a backup hard drive. He plugged in his cap's hidden compartment, the real USB, the one that mattered. On the screen, the latest footage uploaded, the audio of Ethan's lobby speech, the accusations, the threats, the arrogance. Jackson smiled. "They took the bait," he said. "But they still don't know they were always the ones being watched." He looked down at the board pinned inside the van. Ethan's name in bold red. Underneath, 3 words. Final step. The board. The next morning, things at King Lion were tense, whispers in the hall. Mid-level managers pacing. A sudden email alert flashed across every screen. Emergency executive board meeting, 10 a.m. Attendance mandatory. Ethan strode into the lobby like he was walking toward a victory parade. His assistant rushed to meet him. "Emergency meeting," she whispered. "No details," he smirked. "Probably another numbers celebration. I've got the full growth report ready." At exactly 9:59, Ethan pushed open the doors to the boardroom and froze. Every seat was filled. The entire board of directors was there. But at the head of the table sat Jackson Carter, no disguise, no delivery cart. Just the man who had built King Lion from nothing, staring him down with eyes that no longer held warmth. Ethan's voice broke. What are you doing here? I thought you retired." Jackson stood slowly. "I stepped down," he said. "But I never left, and today I'm not here to ask questions. I'm here to show the truth." He nodded. A lawyer stepped forward and placed a laptop on the table. The screen lit up with the first video. Ethan stomping on the logo, shouting about old employees, mocking the company's past. Then the next clip. Falsified reports, voice memos, altered contracts, employee testimonies. The board sat still. Their faces slowly shifted from curiosity to shock, then to cold, hard anger. Jackson's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I gave you a chance," he said to Ethan. "A chance to protect the soul of this company, but you sold it for numbers." The chairman of the board finally spoke. "Ethan Blake, the evidence is overwhelming. This is not leadership pressure. It's fraud." A file was slid toward Ethan, full of financial lies, unethical terminations, manipulation, and falsification. Ethan stammered. "This is a setup. He's been spying on me. This is personal. Revenge." Jackson stepped forward and laid something gently on the table. His old delivery cap. "No," he said. "This is accountability." The boardroom was silent. So silent you could hear the air conditioning hum. Ethan stood there, eyes darting from face to face, waiting for someone to defend him. But no one moved. Not one voice rose on his behalf. One by one, The board members raised their hands. A unanimous vote. Ethan Blake was officially removed from his position as CEO of King Lion. He looked around, eyes wild. "You're making a mistake. I brought in profits. I modernized this company." Jackson stepped forward and picked up the cap from the table, brushing a thumb along its worn brim. "You modernized it by discarding people," he said, "by distorting values, by turning a family into a machine and trampling the people who built it." Two security personnel stepped inside. This time, they didn't come for Jackson. Ethan's final protest died in his throat as they flanked him. There were no cheers, no applause, only silence as he was led out of the boardroom, stripped of the power he had misused. Jackson watched him go, then turned to the board. "I'm not coming back as CEO," he said plainly, "but I will lead the recovery just until the ship is steady again." A board member leaned forward. "Do you have someone in mind as successor?" Jackson nodded without hesitation. "I do. Someone who still listens, who still respects, who hasn't lost sight of the people." The next day, everything at King Lion felt lighter. Old faces began returning. Wendy was back in accounting. Tom, the veteran driver, was walking the warehouse again. Cheryl smiled and meant it for the first time in months. Jackson sat in his temporary office, papers spread across the desk, a new organizational chart halfway complete. At the center lay a single personnel file, one name printed clearly at the top: Noah Taylor. Linda stepped in, placing a stack of reports on the desk. "You might want to know, over 100 emails from employees have come in since yesterday. Some who left want to come back." Jackson looked up. "That's a start." He rose from his chair and walked to the window. Below, near the coffee station, employees laughed, genuinely laughed, while sipping coffee. A simple moment, but one that hadn't existed in far too long. "We haven't fully recovered," Jackson said quietly, "but the company, it's alive again." That afternoon, a company-wide meeting was called, not in a conference room, but in the heart of the warehouse, where it all began. No stage, no suits, just chairs arranged in a circle, executives and workers sitting side by side. Jackson stepped up to a wooden crate used as a platform, mic in hand. He looked out over the sea of familiar and new faces. "Over the past year, I've watched this company change, not because of market shifts or technology, but because we lost the one thing that mattered most: people." He let the silence settle. "Today, I officially retire. This time for good, but I leave King Lion in the hands of someone who's earned it, not with numbers, but with heart." He turned and gestured. Noah stepped up slowly, visibly nervous, but with eyes full of purpose. "This is your new CEO," Jackson said. "Chosen not for his age, not for his title, but for his integrity." The warehouse erupted in applause, long, thunderous, and heartfelt. Noah took the mic with trembling hands. "I never imagined standing here," he said. "But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that leadership doesn't come from giving orders. It comes from listening, from protecting, from remembering." He glanced at Jackson, then looked back at the crowd. "I won't promise perfection, but I promise to lead with honesty and with the memory of the man who built this place with his bare hands." As the applause swelled again, Jackson stepped back, smiling quietly. After the event, while others were shaking hands and posing for photos, Jackson slipped away. Back in his office, he packed the last of his things into a cardboard box. Only one item remained on his desk: an old photo frame showing King Lion's first delivery truck parked in front of a tiny warehouse. Tom peeked in. "You really leaving? This time?" Jackson smiled, tucking the photo into the box. "For real. The wheel's in good hands now." They looked out the window together. Noah was down there, surrounded by employees, listening, laughing, remembering names. "He's the future," Jackson said. "Not because he's the best, but because he's kind." Jackson stepped out of the office one last time. The wall behind. His desk now held a framed piece of fabric. his old delivery cap. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Legacy isn't built on power, it's built on integrity." And with that, the old lion finally walked away. The end.